Let's do a formal letter. This is for paper 2, which requires evaluation. Now, this is an advanced lesson. If you're doing evaluation for the first time, I would suggest that you look for this video first. I will put a link up here for you. Welcome to English Step by Step. My name is Miss Wee. We will be doing the October-November 2021 paper 2-3. So again, here are the steps. Step 1 is to read the titles and blurbs of the two texts. These two texts don't have blurbs, so I'm just going to read the titles. Text A, Why I Hate Museums, and text B, Museums Are Changing. So one has the negative points about museums, and this one presents the positive points. Step 2 is to read the question and highlight or underline the keywords. So pay attention to the genre or the format in the instructions. So it's either a speech, letter, or magazine article. Letter can be either formal or informal. If you're interested in writing an informal letter, I'm going to put a link up here. Otherwise, carry on with this video. So here we have the question. Take a moment to read, and I will highlight it for you in a few seconds. I've highlighted it for you here. Imagine that your school is proposing a program of visits to different museums for all students in your year group. Your head teacher has asked you for your opinion. You have to write a letter to your head teacher, and this is how you know that it needs to be a formal letter. Informal letters are written to friends or family. Formal letters are usually written to figures of authority. In your letter, you should evaluate the views and museums in both texts. So if you don't know what evaluate means, I have a lot of videos on that. I will put a link to one of them here. Give your own views based on what you have read about whether or not a program of visits would be a good idea. So this is a persuasive piece of writing. Again, don't worry too much about writing within 350 words. I think you would do better if you write a little bit more than this. Step 3 is to read the text, both of them, and underline the points for both sides. So I've done it here already. So these are the negative points. There's a long queuing time. It's very stifling. Museums are boring. There's little to learn. Some of the exhibits are not authentic. They can get crowded. They can be expensive. And not all exhibits are available for viewing. And it's too tempting to buy expensive souvenirs at the gift shop. Now let's move on to the positive points about museum visits. So they are now revamping to attract different types of visitors by offering new experiences. There are health benefits. Sorry, I should have highlighted this one as well. For example, it's very calming. It also has emotional benefits, such as these listed here. And this is related to this one up here, that they are targeting different types of people now. And it's also possible to do a virtual tour. Step 4 is to group similar points together and then choose two groups of points from each text or each side of the argument. So I have grouped these three together. It's boring, it's stifling, and it lacks educational value. And here financially it's just not worth it or not practical for students, especially because students don't have a lot of money. On this side, I have talked about the physical and emotional benefits of visiting museums. And here I'm talking about how museums are not as boring as they used to be because they are providing new experiences and attracting different types of audiences. The next step is to draw and fill in the table. So I have 4 columns here. I'm going to probe both sides, and that's why I say that this is an advanced lesson. In the first video on evaluation that I made, I have only probed one side. That is a little bit simpler to do. So if you're not familiar with evaluation, you might want to start with that one. So the first column is a synthesis and assimilation of ideas, which means to have groups of ideas put together and expressed in your own words. And the last column is to provide your answer as to whether the school should organize museum visits and your solution to any weaknesses that you have found. So let's start with the first point, or the first group of points. Not only do museums not appeal to the younger generation, it stifles their sense of freedom and offers them little educational value. So here I'm going to agree with this by saying that it is more educational and exciting for students to visit farms, historical landmarks, factories, and local businesses. And here I'm going to disagree with this point. That means I'm going to find the weakness of the point by saying that not all museums are dry and barren. For example, science museums where students can conduct unusual experiments. So they can be quite interesting. So my solution and my answer is to limit museum visits to once a year, or maybe to have just a virtual visit, a virtual tour, since that's a possibility nowadays, and organize more field trips instead, because those are more hands-on and engaging. My next point is that it does not make financial sense for the school or for students. Entrance fees and souvenirs can be exorbitant, and students may not get to see much, especially during the tourist season when it's very crowded. Here I'm going to disagree by saying some museums offer free entrance or at least large discounts for school groups. However, monetary cost is not the only consideration. Museum visits are also time consuming, and students can't afford that amount of time. Here I'm going to talk about the positive points now from text B. So these were the negative points from text A. Museums are revolutionizing and becoming more interactive. So I agree by saying they understand they need to change in order to retain the interest of visitors and be sustainable so they don't have to close down. I'm going to disagree by saying that there is a limit to what they can do within walls. I mean, it's just a building. You can't do anything too exciting within a building. And then my solution and answer, outdoor adventures and nature expeditions are more suitable for teenagers with a lot of restless energy. My last point, there are many physical and emotional benefits. The strength of the point is that students definitely need to de-stress and build confidence. But the weakness of the point is that field trips and outdoor activities confer more of such advantages, of these advantages. So the solution is to organize trips that are more age appropriate. Maybe museums are more appropriate for middle-aged people. We're going to move on to writing the formal letter, but before that, I want to talk about creating a convincing voice. So to create a convincing voice, we need to have three things. You can remember it as PAT, P-A-T, PAT. So P for purpose. What is the purpose of your writing the letter? So remember that you are aiming to persuade your head teacher not to go ahead with this program of museum visits. Your audience is your head teacher, so you have to remember to be very polite and formal. That also affects your tone. Your tone would be very respectful. Here are some key characteristics of a formal letter. First of all, you need to have a formal tone, which means the language is polite, respectful, and professional. So please don't use any contractions, slangs, or idioms. There should be a clear purpose, directly stated in the opening paragraph. Don't waste any of the recipient's time. So no irrelevant information. There should be proper structure. Start with salutation, you have body paragraphs and a proper closing. The language should be objective and neutral. So no strong emotions. And arguments should be based on facts and logic rather than emotions. This is where you will need good vocabulary. So you would use inquire instead of ask, assist instead of help, and so on. And now let's look at the formal letter that I've written based on the table. So let's have a quick look at this table again. I will have 4 paragraphs based on these 4 points. I will incorporate all of these in my first body paragraph, this in my second body paragraph, third paragraph, and fourth. I will also have an introduction and conclusion, so altogether I will have 6 paragraphs. So this is the letter.
Dear Mrs. Smith, thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on the proposed program of museum visits. After careful consideration, I believe this initiative may not be the most suitable option for our year group. Allow me to explain my reasoning. Firstly, museums often struggle to capture the interest of the younger generation. Many students find them restrictive, as they offer limited freedom to explore and provide minimal hands-on engagement. While it is true that some museums, such as science centers, allow students to conduct experiments and interact with exhibits, these are exceptions rather than the rule. I believe that students would find visits to farms, historical landmarks, factories, and local businesses far more educational and stimulating. Such outings not only spark curiosity, but also provide practical, real-world experiences. Therefore, I suggest that museum visits be limited to once a year, complemented by more engaging and interactive field trips. Secondly, the financial aspect of frequent museum visits should not be overlooked. Admission fees, souvenirs, and transportation can impose a significant burden on both the school and students' families. Moreover, during peak tourist seasons, overcrowding may hinder students from fully benefiting from the experience. While I understand that some museums offer free or discounted entry to school groups, the monetary cost is not the only concern. Museum visits also demand a considerable amount of time, which could be better utilized for other educational opportunities. Additionally, while I recognize that many museums are evolving to include more interactive exhibits, there are limits to what they can achieve within their walls. Outdoor adventures and nature-based activities are inherently better suited to teenagers who thrive in dynamic environments. Such experiences cater to their energy levels and provide opportunities for physical activity, teamwork, and creativity. It is often argued that museum visits offer physical and emotional benefits by reducing stress and boosting confidence. While I acknowledge this, I believe field trips and outdoor activities offer even greater advantages. Tailoring excursions to the interests and needs of students will help maintain their enthusiasm and motivation. In conclusion, I feel that a program of frequent museum visits may not be the most effective way to enrich students' learning. I hope my feedback will assist you in your deliberations on this matter. Thank you for considering my perspective. Yours sincerely, Julia Sands, Class 11A.
So don't forget the last step, which is to check your work, and do check after every paragraph instead of after you've written the whole thing. Let's break things down a little bit. So here you have your salutation, your body paragraphs, and then a proper closing. So I have an introduction here, a conclusion here. I have 4 body paragraphs, which I have written using the points from the table. Notice that I am very polite and respectful because I'm writing to my school principal. My purpose is very clear. My tone is very objective. I'm using formal language without contractions. And your full name, please. If you find it difficult to write the letter or magazine article or speech, I have a planner that will guide you through the process and make it super simple. Please click on the link up here to access the 3 different templates. I have a lot more videos. Please do go and check them out. I also have a video about the difference between formal and informal, so please click on the link up here if you want to watch that video. If you have questions, leave them in the comment box below, and if you need tutoring, you can contact me here. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in my next video.